Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. It's your boy D Black coming back with another Raw review. Alright, let's get to it. Raw was not too bad tonight. It was pretty decent. So let's get on with the show. We have Roman Reigns, he's coming out, talking to Adam Pearce, telling him that he's going to call Jacob Fatu out to the ring. And as he's talking, you can hear Jacob's music playing in the background. And then Jacob's going out to the ring and stuff. And then Jacob calls Roman Reigns out to the ring. And then out comes the Usos and stuff. And Jay is carrying a chair in his hand, bringing it to the ring and stuff. And as they get into the ring, Jimmy's telling, Jacob that, that they're going to, to chill because they're going to fire him for what he did for his action that he took in Backlash when he attacked the officials and threw Adam Pearce out of the ring and stuff. And then Jay tries to actually sneak up on Jacob, and then Jacob, takes both of the Usos out. I mean, he wears them out, and he puts this Tonga death grip on them both. And then Roman Reigns comes out, and they just brawl and brawl and brawl. And then the Usos join in, and they eventually start taking Jacob out and everything. I mean, they beat him down, and man. So Jacob takes a pretty good beating in this match, and then Roman tells Adam Pearce, well, actually, as the match goes, after they go on, then Jacob, gets on the mic and he tells Roman that he wants to fight him in a tribal combat match and stuff. And we know how dangerous the tribal combat match is because just about a year ago is that Roman Reigns and Solo Sikoa had that same match, and Roman beat Solo in that match, but they did nothing with it after that, and we never got to see Solo, acknowledge Roman Reigns or anything. But anyway, Roman sees Adam Pearce and he tells Adam Pearce, well, actually, when Jacob Fatu, challenges him to that match, then Roman Reigns actually accepts the match, and then he tells Adam Pearce to, do it, get the match set and everything. So we all know how dangerous this match is. It's going to be pretty wild. And this match is going to be at Clash in Italy, so it ought to be pretty good. It's going to be interesting. And then we get the match with Finn Balor and JD McDonough. The match was a street fight match. They did their thing. McDonough, got his work in, and Finn Balor got their work in. It was a pretty decent match and stuff as it was going. And eventually, Dom, he's going to get involved in the match, and he's going to try to, help JD McDonough and everything. Then he gets caught, and Finn Balor nails him with the garbage can on the side of the ring apron and stuff, and and then he puts the garbage can on JD McDonough, goes to the top rope, coup de grace, and wins the match. Then we get Seth Rollins talking to Kathy Kelly, and he's trying to, call Braun Breaker out, saying that he knows. Seth is telling him, saying that he himself knows that he's a marked man and that he doesn't have any allies, and sooner or later that he has to put an end to the vision. Then he goes on saying that the easiest way through a situation is to run through it, meaning that, he has the vision there and he has to run through them, to get rid of them, one by one. Then he says that he hasn't, then he goes on to say that he hasn't had a match, in 9 months, and that he is ready to take on a challenge, with any of the guys, from the vision. He said one of them, two of them, all of them, it doesn't matter to him. He wants to take the vision out and just end them. And then says that he wants the guy who says that he thinks he is ready, but has not, and not that guy, you know, that says that then says that he wants the guy that says that he can beat him, you know, on his own, but he can't. Talking about Braun Breaker, because Braun Breaker is saying that, he can take Seth Rollins out, and we know last when he fought Seth Rollins and everything, he had help with the rest of the people in the vision to come out and everything. But we all know Braun Breaker, he's pretty he's pretty bad and stuff. And the way that he goes about that doggone spear is crazy, 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 crazy. And then he asks, Braun Breaker, who is he really? And then says, is he a nepo baby? Can he hack it and stuff? Um, is he a athlete that turns into some wad of wasted potential, or is he everything he says that he is? You know, and then tells Braun Breaker, that he wants a match with him. He asks him, is he ready? You know, you know. So I guess we're supposed to see tonight, if Braun Breaker, answers the challenge, from Seth Rollins. Then we get Brian talking to Sol Ruka, asking how she, feels, being up on the main roster and stuff like that in her first two matches. And she's saying even though she lost her two matches and stuff, one with Io Sky, and I think she lost to Liv Morgan and stuff. But she said that she's there. She's got everybody up on all the women back there up on notice and stuff like that. And then Becky Lynch comes out, that telling Soruka that she bit off more than she can chew, and then she tells her to leave, and go back to NXT because she's not that one and everything because she lost her first two matches, you know, um, from the start. But again, she had it with Liv Morgan, who was a champion, and then Io Sky. Come on, I wouldn't expect so, but she in both matches she did her thing. And then as Becky Lynch is talking, then you can hear Ruka's music playing and stuff. And then Becky, gets mad, and so Ruka goes out to the ring and stuff, and then she's calling Becky Lynch out, you know, um, and stuff, and then Becky Lynch comes out, So she's saying that she wants to face Becky Lynch, tonight, and then we know Becky's gonna say no, so she says no and everything, and eventually through all that, they end up getting the match for a Saturday night main event, which is this weekend coming and stuff. And then we get the vision. We got Braun Breaker telling Paul Heyman, to make the match, with Seth. And then Paul Heyman is like basically saying that no, I mean, they know where Seth Rollins is tonight and everything. And so he gave that match and said that, Austin Theory will take that challenge to Seth Rollins and stuff, and he's telling Braun Breaker like, it's going to be the right time, the right place, and everything. Seth Rollins is there, and he can take him out and stuff, or do what he has to do. And he said that before, so we'll see what happens. And then we get the match with the Creed brothers in the original El Grande Americano, which is such a crappy thing, against the El Grande Americanos and stuff. The match was okay. I guess they tried to get it in luchador style and stuff like that. They were, I mean, it's a match of like who really cares. I mean, El Grande Americano and the original El Grande Americano. I think this weekend have a match where it's mask versus mask or something like that. But anyway, El Grande Americanos they win the match And then we get the Usos with Captain Kelly talking, about the tribal chief. Well, actually, the tribal combat match. And then out comes L.A. Knight, and then Jimmy tells him like, look, now is not the time to actually, start talking and stuff. And then L.A. Knight reminds them of, the vision, what the vision has done and how they went about things. And he basically telling them that they're doing the same thing, that the vision is doing, and saying he's going to, LA Knight saying that he's going to have to do, what he has to do, even if it gets him, beat down, and he said that he's okay with that, you know, and then he says, you do dirt, you get dirt. And then Jimmy tells him, not now. And then they walk off. Then we get this segment with Michael Cole and Ethan Page and, and stuff. And this, I mean, Ethan Page is a different guy. He, like I said, he's all ego and everything. He wasn't giving Michael Cole a chance to do anything. The interview list that he wanted to ask for questions that he had written down that he gave to Michael Cole, and Michael Cole said, "Look, he's not going to do this" and stuff like that. And then Ethan Page said, "Yeah, he wouldn't figure, he wouldn't think that Michael Cole would do it because he's not that kind of announcer and everything like that." So I mean, he wants Penta. He wants to match with Penta, and he said that he's going to beat Penta, at Saturday Night Main Event, for the Intercontinental title. And I believe that's probably going to happen. I think they're going to put that belt on Ethan Page. I hope not, but he'll bring something to it and with it. So we'll see what happens with that. Then we get the match with Raquel Rodriguez and Roxanne Perez against Paige and Brei. And this match was, actually kind of decent. I mean, there was some missed spots and stuff like that. It kind of lagged a little bit and stuff, and I was hoping that Roxanne and Raquel would win the titles. But anyway, that didn't happen. You know, Paige and Brei wins the match. I believe it was on a roll up or something like that. And then after they got the win, then Liv comes in and she attacks both Paige and Brei, and then Raquel and Roxanne come in and they join in, beating them down and stuff, and then all of a sudden Bailey and Lara Raquel come out, for the save, and the Judgment Day walks off. And then we got LA Knight with Seth Rollins, and LA Knight is telling Seth Rollins, that he's gonna get beat up, that he's gonna get stomped, in the match, especially messing around with the Vision and stuff. Then says that his enemy of his enemy is his enemy, because usually we would always say the enemy of my enemy is my friend, but he's saying my enemy of my enemy is his enemy, meaning that he doesn't like Seth Rollins, nor does he like the Vision. And then he tells Seth Rollins, why he's getting beat down. If he needs his help, he's not going to be there to come out and to help him. Then he tells Seth Rollins to have fun, getting beat down and getting stomped out. And then LA Knight walks off. And then we got the open challenge for Oba Femi. And as Oba is in the ring, out comes Brock Lesnar. And Brock Lesnar, sneaks attack Oba Femi, and he F bombs him four times. He put the beat down on on Oba Femi. It was crazy. It was that shock factor that it happened and everything. Because I'm thinking that Oba is retired after what we saw at WrestleMania. You're thinking that we're not going to see Brock Lesnar anymore. But out comes Brock Lesnar because who's going to come out and take over Femi out in these challenges? Who back there as a heel that's capable of doing that, especially with the dominance that Obafemi has been showing. And then Brock Lesnar comes out and he does his thing, so it sets up that match, with Brock Lesnar and and Over is going to be a good one. Then Adam Pearce is looking for Paul Heyman, trying to figure out what happened and everything. And then Paul Heyman, gives Adam Pearce a contract. He says that Brock Lesnar has signed it, for a rematch, at Clash in Italy. And he said that, if he gets Obafemi to sign the match, it could be, one of the biggest matches, in history. So I guess Adam's going to have to get a mean, mad Oba to sign that contract. Oba is going to be pissed next week and stuff. So he's about to take it out on somebody. Unless Braun Breaker comes out, not Braun Breaker, but unless Brock Lesnar comes back out and they brawl. But that was pretty good. That was pretty decent. Then you got Kathy and Street Profits. Saying that they have they're gonna they have the vision, you know that they have their own vision, that they will take out the vision and walk out of Saturday Night Main Event with the tag team titles and stuff, and then once they say, hey, they're Street Profits and they want to smoke, Montez Ford gets mad at Angelo Dawkins, because Angelo Dawkins is kind of like more or less in Seth, Rollins' corner and stuff, And then then Angelo Dawkins goes up to Seth, telling Seth that he don't have, Seth is telling Angelo Dawkins that he doesn't have any friends, and that he knows that nobody trusts him, And then Seth said that he gets that, that he gets it and everything, that he doesn't have any friends and stuff, and that people can't trust him and stuff like that, So he tells Angelo Dawkins that he was sorry for what happened to him last week when he stepped aside and Braun Breaker speared him and stuff, and they got a little bit beat down and stuff. And then we get the match with Seth Rollins and Austin Theory. The match was okay, you know. It was a pretty decent match and stuff, and it ended with the pedigree, and stuff from Seth Rollins onto Austin Theory and stuff. And Seth Rollins wins the match, and then as he wins the match, Logan Paul jumps in, and he attacks Seth Rollins, and then after the attack, then Austin Theory comes along and he starts attacking them. So they got the vision on them and stuff like that. And Angelo Dawkins comes out, to help Seth, with the beatdown and stuff. And then as the vision is beating them down, the vision takes out Angelo Dawkins and stuff. And that means Montez Ford is going to come out. So Montez Ford comes running out, to the ring, to help Angelo Dawkins. And then all of a sudden, Braun Breaker, he comes out and he takes them all out. He spears everybody. He spears Montez Ford. He took him apart. And then Seth Rollins comes in and he attacks, Braun Breaker for a while. Then Logan Paul grabs Seth, and then Braun Breaker spears Seth in half. And then the beatdown starts happening and everything. And then, Braun Breaker tries to get the ring chairs. The ring corner chairs and everything. He was going to drop them on Seth's head. Then Adam Pearce and some officials came out there, to break it up and separate them and stuff like that. And then as they're walking out of the ring area, Logan Paul tells Adam Pearce that he can't fire anyone because he's only the general manager and stuff. So it was a pretty decent show. It wasn't all that bad. It wasn't great and everything, but it was a pretty decent show. So I'm gonna probably give it a 4 out of 10 because of the fact of what happened with over Femi. That was pretty good. Brock Lesnar coming out, seeing Brock, seeing him taking out over Femi, so we know Brock Lesnar, you know, never retired and stuff, or maybe just coming back after, that, you know, to just bring something to the matches, I would guess, and stuff. So we'll see how that goes down and everything. Um, like I said, the show was pretty decent and stuff. It could have been a little bit better, but they're trying to get there. But anyway, please don't forget to subscribe, like, share, leave a comment. Let me know how you feel, if you agree, disagree, or however you're feeling. All right. So thank you for watching. God bless. Deuces, and I'll see you on the next video. Thank you.